Hey everybody, and welcome to the webinar, Keeping Key Stakeholders Informed with B2W Inform Alerts and Notifications. We're here to do a 30-minute expert series for you today. I have myself, I'm Eliza Holzman, I'm the product manager of B2W Inform. We also have Jeremy Onisco today, who is the program manager of B2W Inform. We're going to start off with the importance of near and real-time communication, and then we'll be doing a live demonstration within the product itself for creating custom alerts in B2W Inform and some of the different scenarios that you might utilize if you use the product already or if you're interested in using the product. And then at the end, we'll have some Q&A. If you have any questions, you'll be able to post questions into the GoToMeeting panel on the side there, and we will work to answer those as they come in. All right, so let's go to the next slide here. So B2W Inform. So what we're focusing on today is really around keeping key individuals aware of important information and events that are going on within your organization. So how do we make that happen? There are a number of different types of communication that we can utilize within B2W Inform itself, different ways of accessing important information. We can make sure that any forms that are being filled out within your organization are accessible anytime, anywhere. That makes it so that anybody looking for specific information can really go and find it very easily without needing to call anybody or email someone. They can just go into the application and find what they're looking for. We also have the ability to configure text, SMS, email, and in-app alert notifications. These are types of notifications that are specific to your organization, where you can actually define the criteria under which those notifications are triggered. We'll be visiting that later within the application itself. We also support real-time form approval and rejection workflows with automatic notifications. So being able to review forms that are being submitted from the field, go over the information that's in those forms, and either approve that into an approval state, or being able to reject that form with information and comments about why it was rejected and what the original form filler needs to do to fix that form. We also have the ability to build custom reports and dashboards. This allows you to look at trends and analyze some of the patterns that are going on within your organization. And then we can also actually define report schedules for automatic delivery of those reports and dashboards that you build within the system. So making sure that people have the information that they need at any given time, or that they're scheduled to get at a specific time that's needed. So with that, we will jump into the demonstration, and I'm going to pass it off to Jeremy.
Thank you very much, Eliza. So let me just toggle here really quickly, and let's pull up B2W Inform. So again, as Eliza gave you in the introduction, I am Jeremy Onisco. I'm the program manager here at B2W Software, and I work with every single one of our B2W Inform clients. So what I have today for you is to share just two real simple use cases for alerts and notifications based on conversations and needs that I've heard from our clients. So the first one is based around a conversation I recently had with a safety advisor, and just to kind of put together the background here for you. The problem that he was trying to solve was the amount of time it was taking him at the end of the month to email copies of all the completed site inspection forms to their subcontractors. When you're talking about a few forms and you have a couple of subs, this is an easy enough task to do in B2W Inform. By opening a form, emailing it directly, or even provisioning maybe read-only rights to a particular user. But when you're talking about many forms completed across multiple job sites on different days for dozens sometimes of subs, this is a bit of a time-consuming task. So what I'd asked this individual was, what if a copy of a site inspection form could be automatically emailed to all of the subs working on the job site at the time the form is completed, meaning the time the form is submitted and sent up to the server? And would this meet their need? To which he responded, yes, absolutely. So what we did was create a few new custom alerts to help automate this task. So let me just dig in quickly to what this form could look like. Now this is going to be an overly simplified example of a site inspection form here, but for the purposes of this webinar, it'll suit us just fine. So if I open this here, we can see this is, again, a very simplified version of a site inspection form. Maybe I'll be prompted for my name, which will be pulled from our ops database, and that'll help to start our form here. And what you can see is that I've just got a single page here, very simple form. We're capturing some basic details from the system, presenting that on the form, things like form name and who's completing the form. But then we're asking the end user to fill in some data for us. So notably things like the job or the project that they're working on, the date and the time of the inspection, and then having them run through and selecting a number of different radio buttons to determine whether or not we have an acceptable or an unacceptable or not applicable value for any one of these given areas in the site inspection form. So we won't need to run through and fill this out, but you can see that this form also does accept photos, so these can be taken in real time on a job site. We're capturing an electronic signature for the inspector and allowing a little space for additional notes. So just kind of putting to the groundwork here for you so you understand what we're going to be working with in the alerts. So I'll just go ahead and I'll leave this form. We don't need to save any of these changes because really what we're focused on here is taking a look at the alert itself. So as an administrator in the system, I have been provisioned with one of the necessary permissions for creating alerts, not just accessing my own notifications, but the ability to create custom alerts. So this is me here navigating to the alerts page, and then on the alerts tab, you can see that we've already got 13 different alerts in play. If I want to create a new alert, which we'll do for this demonstration here, we'll see that creating a new alert is as simple as working your way through a couple of simple steps. So for this example, we're going to start with maybe a new site inspection. And let's designate this for a specific company. And I've already got a sample one in there, so we'll call it Acme Construction number 2. So new site inspection form dash Acme Construction number 2, that's simply the name of my alert. The next step here is to configure my alert criteria. So this will be as simple as identifying my template from my list of available templates to pick from. So we'll see here, we've got this webinar dash site inspection form, and I can select this one here. As soon as I select my template, I can start to develop the rules for my alert. So we have a rules and expression engine built behind the scenes here, but a very simple interface for you as an end user to work with as you're creating your rules. So in this example, kind of thinking back through the scenario that we were talking about, we're going to create a couple of really quick rules here. So the first one is just going to be based around a date and a time component. And in this case, it's going to be the completed on or submitted on metadata value for this form. So quite simply, I can create a rule that says if the completed on or submitted on date and time is greater than or equal to today, December 19th, 2019, then the rule will evaluate true. And if so, actions will take after that. And that'll be the step 3 and step 4 that we'll get into in a second. But let's say that I want to layer on some additional complexity here in my rule, in my alert. And I want to add a group. And in this group, I'll have 2 additional rules built in. So what we now want to look at is defining the alert such that we're looking specifically at the job and or project name that was filled out in the form itself. So what we're looking at now is the first job project name equaling, let's just pick the Elm Street Bridge Improvement Project, and the second option here, let's go ahead and pick the General Sullivan Bridge Expansion. And that's what I'm going to leave our alert rules at for the purpose of this demonstration. Well, Thank you, Eliza. And we're just going to toggle the switch over here. So if I read these set of rules out in plain English here, for this alert to evaluate true, the completed on and submitted on date and timestamp for this form must be greater than or equal to today, and the job project name must equal Elm Street Bridge Improvement or the General Sullivan Bridge Expansion. If those conditions occur, i.e. a form is completed and the data matches those conditions, then my alert evaluates true. When that happens, there's going to be a number of things that take place, such as SMS or email alerts being sent out. If none of these rules evaluate, as I've got them defined here, then the alert simply will take no action and we'll move on with our day. So let's kind of tidy up the last half of our alert here now that we've defined our rules, and we'll specify who we want to send these alerts to, so i.e. our alert recipients. Now we've got a couple of options here. We can choose to pick from users that have Inform licenses. So you can see Bob Carver here. I could even select Eliza if I wanted. And these again are users in the system that own Inform licenses. And you can see that there's an email address and a phone number associated with those users. Alternatively, I can choose to select a user group. So this is much easier if I knew that I had a particular group of, let's say, foremen, and I wanted to send this alert to everybody that belonged to that user group, foreman, instead of having to select each individual. Additionally, we do support the addition of external recipients. So we can choose to send alerts to external recipients both via email as well as using a phone number for SMS alerts. So if I just had a John Smith, let's just say, and we're looking at Acme Construction as kind of our example here. So we may have a jsmith@acme.com. I can add that email here. And you can see that on the right-hand side under the select recipients area that John Smith is designated as an external recipient. I have an email defined for them. But then if you take a look at these three different columns, excluding the removal column, that second column there has got a little, and I can choose just to check this and uncheck it quickly, little icon of a mail. Of an email or an envelope, whatever you think that looks like. Checking this box here is going to send an email to John Smith anytime one of these, anytime one of these forms is received and the alert evaluates true. Alternatively, I can choose to send SMS messages to any of those individuals that have a phone number, but where my external recipient in this case does not have one, they will not receive an alert. So the last step here is probably one of the more straightforward in terms of just closing out our alert. It's just to simply enter a notification text. So we might just keep it simple, something like, hello, please see the attached forms. There we go. So this is the custom language that's going to be included in the notification text of the email for this particular alert. And then most importantly at the bottom here, we're going to want to toggle on this option to include a form PDF in the email notifications. And what that'll do is exactly as it sounds. It'll take a PDF copy of the form that was submitted and attach it to that email. And what does that email or that SMS look like? Here are a few examples for you that the system presents as kind of help materials. So you can see on the left-hand side, my email notification. It will contain a few pieces of data about the alert. For example, the alert name, some information about the form itself, who the form owner is, as well as the custom text that I chose to include in my alert. And if we have that option toggled to include a copy of the PDF, we'll see that on the back side of the form. All right, I misspoke. Sorry, the back side of the email that you receive. So that's it. Now saving the alert in the bottom right-hand corner, and we can see that this new alert here, right, this new site inspection form, Acme Construction number 2, this one is in fact active. We can see the active column here with the checkbox, and the alert is active and will trigger anytime a new form, in this case that webinar-site inspection form, is filled out, and again, we meet the criteria of that alert. So I'm just going to pause just for a second. Do we have any quick questions about creating that alert or how I configure those alert rules? Eliza's helping me to monitor the questions here. So if you do have any questions, please feel free just to type in as as we move along here. So, okay, well, I'm going to move on to then my second example, because I want to make sure that we've got enough time here this afternoon to kind of talk through maybe some more specific examples or ideas that maybe you as our attendees have for us. So the second example that I want to share with you is based on a slightly different but more data-driven need for alerts and notifications. And again, like the first example that I kind of talked through with you, this one's also based on a real-world ask from one of our Inform clients in a conversation that I had recently. So just to, again, put together the backstory here for you. The need that this client had was that they wanted their equipment manager to only receive alerts anytime a specific piece of equipment scored below a predetermined threshold for any particular inspection category. So when we think about sharing information, scheduling reports is a really great and efficient way to do that. Scheduled reports can aggregate data and present it in a number of different views that make it very valuable, but sometimes action needs to be taken in real time. So that's again where the alerts notifications, which are event driven, come into play. So what I did is I worked with this client and we reviewed their inspection process, and we took a look at the template that they created in B2W Inform for their equipment inspections. We then created a custom alert such that anytime a new inspection was completed, the alert would evaluate the calculated scores and trigger if any of those calculated scores fell below a specific threshold. So let me just pull up what this form looks like here for you, kind of help to paint the picture. So I'm just going to come down to filling out a form again, and we'll just get a new one started. And I've got this new one called Webinar Equipment Inspection, a weekly inspection form. So as we're getting started here, we may choose to pick a piece of equipment. How about just a power curver? And we'll get started with our form. So again, filling out a form, very much the same fashion that we kind of gave you an example with earlier when we were looking at the first alert here. And I'll just put in a few different data fields here so you can see how this is working out. And as an individual works through one of these equipment scoring inspections, you can see that we've got three different categories. I'll just scroll down here for you so you can see we've got 3 pages in this, again, overly simplified equipment inspection template. But then on the first 2 pages, we have 3 different categories for the inspection. The first one being safety equipment, the second being electrical, and the third being the body and the appearance. So again, as an oversimplified example, we're looking at just a few questions for each one of these categories. But you can see that the way the form is filled out is based on a numeric grading system. So quite simply, it's a scale from 1 to 3, where 1 is a poor rating and 3 is a very good rating. And what we're seeing on the form is that in real time, we're calculating an average score for any particular section in this equipment inspection form. So I just went through and I quickly toggled on the radio buttons for the safety equipment section, and we can see that we produced an average score of 2.5. And so on and so forth for the electrical and body appearance section, should I choose to fill those out. And then the last page here, a lot of big space so that we can take some really nice inspection photos and then capture an electronic signature at the bottom of the form. So this is what the form looks like, and you can even see that we've got one of these required questions down here in the bottom that says, or asks, are there any defects on this machine that require immediate attention? Yes or no. Which would be a really great question to set up an alert notification based on, because it's going to be a binary response. It either does or does not require immediate attention, and we could definitely use that to trigger an alert notification to an equipment manager. But I thought we'd go into a little more detail and give you a slightly more complex example of configuring one of these alerts. So keeping in mind what our equipment inspection weekly scoring form looks like, I'm going to leave this here. Open up alerts. I'm going to create a new alert for my equipment score. So let's just keep it really simple. Let's just call this alert something like very low score dash equipment inspection. And we'll move on to step 2. So I'm going to come down, I'm going to find my equipment inspection template, and we're going to see that the rules engine is going to open up for me. And now what I can do is I can start building the expression for my alert. So here, I'm going to take a look at, if you'll recall, we've got those different average scores calculated for each of my sections. So if I wanted to build an alert that would trigger only when an average score was received lower than, or I should say calculated, right, because the form is calculating the score for us, is calculated below a particular threshold, then we want it to evaluate to true. So let's say that for my average safety section score, anything less than a 2.5 is determined to be a failing average, and we want this alert to trigger and notify our equipment manager of the particular form where the score was calculated. But I can also add a few more rules here. So we're trying to give you a couple examples of how we're going to make this a little bit more complex. And we're going to think about our other sections. So we've got a average score for our body section, and then we've got an average score for our electrical section. Maybe not as important as safety. We could think about configuring these later two as something like a 2.25, maybe a 2.1 in terms of the average score calculated for those particular sections. So we're a little more strict in terms of the safety average, and we're being a little less strict here with respect to our body and our electrical averages that are being calculated in the form. And then most importantly, this last piece here, our operator in the top left corner, we're going to have to toggle this over to the or as opposed to and, because if we had left it the way that it was set up, all three of these conditions would have to evaluate to true in order for this alert to fire. In this case, I'm only particularly interested, or in this example that I'm giving you, I'm only particularly interested if any one of these particular sections evaluates less than my predetermined score. So we'll make sure that it's very important that we have that or operator selected. And then it's as simple as selecting our recipients. So this is actually a really good use case for selecting the equipment manager, or maybe the equipment management user group. Maybe I have individuals that move in and out of this user group, or I don't want to have to continuously edit my alert every time I have maybe a personnel change in my equipment team or what have you. Adding the equipment manager user group is going to designate all the individuals in that group for or as recipients for this alert if it evaluates true based on a completed form. So we'll just make sure we check the appropriate box here so we have an email go. We don't necessarily need to send an SMS in this case based on kind of the scenario I'm outlining for you here. So we'll just keep the email option selected. We can skip past the external recipients, and we can add just a little bit of custom notification text here for my alert. So something like, please see the attached form. Equipment received a low score, and again, make sure that we're going to check this box in the bottom left corner to include a copy of that form as a PDF, and then just one more time for you so you can see what this email notification is going to look like. And we'll just save the alert, and there you have it. So now my new equipment inspection weekly scoring alert is active and available, and anytime one of those particular sections evaluates to a score that's lower than the predetermined thresholds that I've set, then that alert will fire, and every individual that's a member of my equipment manager user group will receive an email notification. So that is the end of my second example there. Do we have any questions about how I had configured that? Maybe the use cases around setting up different alerts or multiple alerts to trigger based on very specific conditions? Okay, good question. Someone had asked here, how do we go about copying our alerts? Understandably, you can get quite creative with the rules engine, and if we want to recycle some of that effort and create multiple alerts that are seemingly very similar, what we want to do is use this copy feature here. So if you look over on the right hand side, the action column, there is a copy button. So if I just select on copy, let's just use that last equipment inspection alert that I created as an example. If I click copy here, it's going to create a carbon copy of that alert for me. And you're going to see that as I'm working on this new copy, there's very few requirements here in terms of what needs to be updated. That very first one is quite simply the name. So names for alerts need to be unique. So I'm just going to go ahead and update this to maybe something like, instead of very low score, how about a slightly low score dash equipment inspection, right? And maybe what we want to do is we want to bump up these, I can say bump down, right? So we're going to say, correction, we're going to go the other way. So I can just modify what the average score threshold is for my rules just by simply making a couple of additions here or modifications, and then I don't have to modify anything else in this alert. I can choose to save this, and you can see that now I've got a 16th alert created. So if you had the scenario where you wanted to evaluate maybe a site inspection form for 5 or 6 or even a dozen different job sites, and you had a dozen different subs, and you needed to specify them all as external recipients, the way to work from that end is create a single alert and then copy that alert 11 times. And the only thing that's required there is you're going to give yourself a slightly different name for each one of those alerts, maybe include the sub's name in the alert name itself, and then just define the external recipients. But all of the work that you put into defining and creating the rules for that alert is going to be carried over and saved as you copy each one.
Essentially.
So I'm just reading another question here. Can you have it where if this goes to the person, but if this goes to someone else, must it be 2 separate alerts? Doesn't necessarily need to be 2 separate alerts. Depends on those individuals. If those individuals are going to be internal inform users, external recipients, a combination of both of those, it could be the case where, yes, you could do this all in one single alert, but it also could be the case where it might be easier and it might be nice to have that separation, in which case I would recommend copying the original alert. And then you've got a nice clean line that kind of designates maybe an alert for internal recipients and then an alert for external recipients. Understanding that people move in and out of user groups, you have personnel changes maybe internally, or maybe your external recipients need to be updated on a more regular basis. Might be a little tidier to keep those as 2 separate alerts. If we have any other questions, please just send them our way. Alternatively, I make myself very much available with respect to the Inform element here. Some of you know our trainer for B2W Inform, Mr. John Sheehan. He's also very much available for any of your particular questions, or even just someone to talk through a specific scenario or example with. The 2 examples that I shared with you today for creating alerts and notifications, again, were based off of real world needs and conversations that we've had with our clients. So if you find yourself thinking through maybe a particular business process and you're wondering if you could utilize alerts and notifications to drive some of the communication within your organization, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll talk through it with you, understand your business needs, and be able to figure out a very simple solution here for you. So with that, I will sign off, say thank you for joining us this afternoon. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out if there's any follow-up questions.
Thanks, everyone.